The phrase friend zone has picked up so much baggage over the years that it almost feels risky to even use it anymore. It conjures this image of a bitter guy who feels owed something, and that's not the conversation I want to have. But underneath all that noise, there's a real and genuinely frustrating experience that a lot of guys go through. And it deserves a real conversation, because being deeply liked by someone, being someone they trust and enjoy and actively want in their life, and still somehow not being someone they think about romantically, that gap is real, and it's worth understanding. What I want to talk about today isn't how to trick someone into liking you differently. It's something more interesting than that. It's about understanding how women actually categorize men in their minds, often without fully realizing they're doing it, and what small but meaningful shifts can genuinely change which category you occupy. Because the categorization happens fast, sometimes within the first few interactions, and once it's set, it doesn't change on its own. But it can change. So let me start with the categorization itself, because I think this is the piece most guys never actually hear explained clearly. When a woman meets someone new, she's not consciously running through a checklist. It's not that deliberate. But there is a kind of felt sense that develops quickly about who this person is in relation to her. And one of the things that shapes that felt sense is whether she experiences any tension with you. Not conflict, not drama, actual tension. The kind that makes a conversation feel slightly electric. The kind where you're not entirely sure what the other person is thinking. The kind where there's something slightly unresolved hanging in the air between you. When that tension is present from the beginning, even subtly, you tend to land in a different category than when everything is immediately comfortable and easy and completely without friction. The friend category, if we're being direct about it, is characterized by comfort without tension. And comfort is genuinely beautiful. It's warm and real and valuable. But comfort alone doesn't produce romantic attraction. It produces closeness without charge. And once that's the established dynamic between two people, it takes something intentional to introduce a different energy. Which brings me to the first shift, and it's smaller than you'd expect. Stop cushioning everything you say. A lot of guys who end up in the friend zone have developed this habit, usually out of genuine kindness, of softening every opinion, every observation, every bit of personality they bring into an interaction. They agree quickly. They adjust their enthusiasm to match hers. They never say anything that might land wrong or create any kind of friction. And the effect of that over time is that she stops feeling like she's talking to someone with a fully formed interior world. She feels like she's talking to a mirror, and you can't be attracted to your own reflection. Having a real perspective, one you'll actually stand behind even lightly when pushed, is one of the quietest ways to shift how someone experiences you. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It can be completely warm. But there has to be a you in there that she occasionally bumps up against. Something with edges, something that surprises her slightly. Because surprise is the beginning of curiosity, and curiosity is the beginning of almost everything that matters in early attraction. The second shift is about how you receive her. And this one is interesting because it's almost the opposite of what most advice tells you to do. A lot of guys, when they're trying to signal interest, become incredibly affirming. Everything she says is amazing. Everything she does is impressive. Every story she tells gets the most enthusiastic response he can produce. And again, this comes from a genuine place. But what it accidentally communicates is that you're auditioning. That her approval is the thing you're managing. And women feel that even when they can't name it. It creates this subtle imbalance where she's elevated and you're reaching. And that gap doesn't produce attraction. It produces a kind of power she never asked for. and often doesn't find comfortable. The shift here is to receive her as an equal, to be genuinely interested without being aid, to listen well and respond honestly rather than reflexively positively. Sometimes that means gently disagreeing. Sometimes it means laughing at something she said, without immediately following it with a compliment. Sometimes it just means not filling every silence with reassurance. The experience of being seen by someone who isn't trying to manage your impression of them is surprisingly rare and surprisingly compelling. Now, here's the third one, and this is where it starts to get a little more internal. Your physical presence matters more than you probably think. And I'm not talking about appearance. I'm talking about how you carry yourself in the space you share with her. There's a particular quality that tends to get categorized as friendly versus romantic. And it lives in things like how much space you take up in a room, whether you hold eye contact through slightly longer beats than is strictly comfortable, whether you move with a certain kind of ease, or whether you're always slightly contracted, slightly careful, slightly apologetic about being there. A man who is physically at ease with himself, who isn't performing his body but just inhabiting it, reads very differently than someone who is visibly monitoring how he comes across. And this isn't about being louder or bigger or more dominant. It's about being settled. Settled in your posture, settled in your pace, settled in the way you occupy a moment without rushing through it. That quality of settledness is deeply associated with someone who is comfortable with themselves. And comfort with yourself, your actual self, rather than the performance of a self you think she wants, is genuinely one of the most attractive things that exists. The fourth is about flirting, and more specifically, about actually doing it. This sounds obvious, but it's the one that most guys in this situation are genuinely not doing. Usually because they're afraid of ruining the friendship, or getting rejected, or changing the dynamic in a way that becomes awkward. And those fears are real. But here's the thing. The absence of flirting is itself a communication. It tells her consistently that you see her as a friend, because that's how you treat a friend. You're warm, you're present, you're supportive, but you don't flirt. And she files that information away, not consciously, just as part of the overall picture she's building of who you are to her. Flirting doesn't have to be heavy or obvious or loaded with subtext. It can be incredibly light. It's in the slight pause before you respond to something, she said. It's in the teasing that has just enough warmth in it to feel different from how you'd tease a male friend. It's in the way you hold eye contact a beat longer than you need to. It's in occasionally noticing something specific about her, not generically complimenting her, but noticing something real and letting her know you noticed. That specificity, that quality of actually seeing someone, is one of the most quietly powerful things you can offer, and it changes the texture of your interactions in a way that plants a different kind of seed than pure friendship does. The fifth shift is the one I think matters most, and it's almost entirely internal, which is why it gets left off most lists like this. You have to actually be willing to lose her. Not as a tactic, not as a performance of detachment designed to make her want you more, but genuinely. If you are holding yourself back, softening your edges, managing her impression of you, never flirting, never introducing any tension, all of it because you're terrified of disrupting what you already have with her. She can feel that fear. She might not be able to articulate it, but it shapes every interaction. It creates this slightly suffocating quality to your dynamic because she can feel the weight of how much you need things to stay stable. And that weight sits between you like something unspoken that neither of you is addressing. When you genuinely arrive at a place where you value yourself enough to be fully yourself around her, to express real interest without guarantee, to risk the friendship rather than silently sacrifice the possibility of something more, the entire energy shifts. You stop performing safety for her. You stop being so careful. And paradoxically, that's often when the dynamic begins to move, because she starts to experience you differently. She starts to feel, maybe for the first time, that there's something slightly unpredictable about where this goes. And unpredictability, in the gentlest sense, is where attraction lives. Now, before we continue, I want you to know that none of these guarantee a specific outcome. Some connections genuinely are friendships, and deep and meaningful ones at that. And no amount of inner work or changed behavior will produce romantic attraction where the underlying chemistry simply isn't there. And that's okay. That's just real life. What these shifts do is remove the barriers that you yourself may have accidentally constructed. They make sure that if the potential is there, it has a chance to surface. They put you in the picture as a complete person, rather than a comfortable, agreeable presence that never quite registered as someone she could feel something for. There's also timing, and this matters in ways you can't always control. Sometimes a woman genuinely isn't in a place where she's open to anything shifting. Sometimes the window closes before you realize it was open. And sometimes, if you make these shifts from a real place rather than a strategic one, the person in front of you might not respond the way you hoped. But the next person, the one who gets the fuller version of you from the very beginning, is going to experience something entirely different. Because that's really what all of this points toward. The goal isn't to unlock this particular woman. The goal is to stop leaving yourself behind when you enter a dynamic with someone you're attracted to. To stop arriving as a slightly smaller, safer, endlessly accommodating version of yourself, and then wondering why she only sees you a certain way. She categorized you based on what you showed her, which means if the picture she has of you is incomplete, the most honest thing you can do for both of you is show her.